All right, what's up, guys? Belton here. Hello, everyone on YouTube. Making a little Path of Exile 2 video here. Going to discuss some crafting updates, some things I've been exploring, some crafts I've been working on, and some mechanical interactions and nuances that perhaps for some or most of you will be new information that I think are pretty cool and have some pretty deep implications. So, going to go through that now, and I'll try and keep it nice and brief. Well, brief insofar as I'm capable. There's a little asterisk there always, I suppose. But I did put together a little some talking points here. So I was gone for 4 or 5 days, had some Christmas festivities, returned to the game yesterday. I had purchased a bunch of divines for 3x each prior to going. I knew I was going to be gone for a few days. This was actually done because I was going to divine my Venter's rings when I returned. Lo and behold, when I come back, divines have jumped from 3x to 37x. They actually went upwards as high as 67 exalts over the following 24 hours, which is pretty crazy. But naturally, that put me in a pretty good position. I was able to leverage what I had on me into a headhunter. Headhunters, I don't think, are going to be the be-all, end-all in the endgame. I don't think, actually, they're really going to have too large of a part to play in the endgame. That's just an early impression, speculation on it, not having the additional charm. The 20 seconds is rather limiting, and because the mobility and the speed in PoE 2 is significantly decreased from what it was in PoE 1. The capacity outside of certain situations like Breach to really take advantage of the the unique function of Headhunter to steal the modifiers. It really has, I think, a limited a limited role to play, but still very cool item. And I happened to see a guy who posted one with +1 endurance charge at the exact same market price as the cheapest headhunters at the time, so couldn't resist. So that was the first thing we did there. And then I was making about 5 to 8 divs an hour passively, doing some currency flipping stuff, primarily arbitrage things with the currency exchange here. One thing that I made probably 20-25 divs on very, very passively and quite easily was purchasing distilled envies. I think I was buying them for 7x for 3 of them, and then taking 3 of those and combining them here, reforging them, and then they would go to the next tier up, which I would do twice, so I would get 6 of them. And then the next tier up cost 9.5 exalts each, so 2 for 19. And again, I would have paid 14x for the 2 prior to recombining, so 5x profit each time. And it would take 45 seconds to a minute and a half to do that cycle. And I did that probably 100 times. I was streaming this, so people started to emulate it rather quickly, so the margins dropped at points, and the availability of the requisite materials, obviously was impacted, but it was still very easy to do, incredibly passive, and it was far outpacing anything I was doing in maps, so that was a nice boon there. And then I was doing a variety of little different crafts that I found to be very profitable, crafting jewels, buying double like two modifier magic jewels, like 2 good modifiers, so like let's say attack speed and lightning penetration, or the quiver mod and attack speed. Just regling that, you've got like a 50-50 to hit a mod that lines up with the 2 that you have on there previously. If you've hit that 3rd mod, 3 mods that work together well, like bare minimum you've got like 5x. If you hit a 4th one on there, you 1, 2, 3 divs. Almost 0 downside exposure, very easy. That was a pretty consistent thing as well, and a variety of other things. Another really big one too was the what's the name of it? The unique belt that gives your rings 40 to 80% increased effect. I don't know why I'm blanking on the name of it, but I decided to work on a mirror craft with a buddy of mine, Bank. Just the 2 of us, just keep it nice and simple. Bank had been farming T15s, T16, or actually I think T15s might be the highest, but doing very high-end farming. He had gathered a bunch of raw currency, and when I returned, he asked me if I'd be interested in, doing something together. So we decided we would go after a mirror craft, and so he was farming the boss that drops that unique belt, and I was doing a variety of different things with divining those, and selling things unidentified, wiggling around with divine, some arbitrage stuff, and just some currency flipping, along with crafting to supplement that while he ran actual maps. But the big story here, aside from those little things, just want to give a quick preface as to to what I was doing to make some currency, because I'm sure if I didn't, people would ask how I was making the money. The bulk of what we have spent, at least a 2-to-1 ratio, has come from bank, not myself. That is unusual with crafts that I'm doing, but full disclosure, in this case, bank is, not to hit the nail on the head, but has been the bank by and large. But yeah, I think we both shared a vision for what we wanted to do with our currency, and it's been an exciting day crafting wise, and uncovered a couple of things that are pretty cool that I'll go through with you guys now. So what we were working on, is want to make the first kind of like official mirror bow for Path of Exile 2. When I say official, I mean one that like really, I don't want to say is worthy of it because it sounds a little pretentious, but one where it's, head and shoulders above the competition, and one where it's, if somebody's to mirror it, it feels right and not like they're kind of settling. The bow that I have here, if I get tier 1 attack speed on this, it'll have 735 PDPS. It's also item level 82 on the tier 1 base, which means it's also capable of getting +3 arrow along with +5 to projectile gem skills. The likelihood of all three of those happening is next to 0, so don't get your hopes up too high there, but at a bare minimum have one of those. And working on the suffixes has taken up most of the time and currency today. Crafting at the very high end, and please don't be discouraged by the figures I'm about to throw out because they're astronomical, in particular for the average person. But understand that this is like going for the 0.1% of the 0.1% high end kind of crafting. There's obviously different levels to this. Don't be discouraged about crafting thinking that it's going to cost you the same to replicate this. However, purchasing the bow base, the 3 prefixes were actually done already. It didn't have runes on it, nor did it have quality. I think that the guy, he didn't necessarily undervalue it. It was a little bit more than a mirror. 1 mirror and 10 divines we paid for it, which was approximately 200 divs. To replicate that crafting wise, I actually put together some spreadsheets. I'm not going to share these or link them below. The reason for that is not because I'm trying to hide information, but rather because they have not, the weights for modifiers are not data mined yet. So this is just me importing the weights from Path of Exile 1 to give myself a rough estimate. Again, just kind of a ballpark idea of what it would take to get certain things. And again, like this could be off by, plus minus 25%. It's really just to give some estimation. But, I did put together a variety of different sheets just to inform the decision-making process there. And by far it was not only like time-wise, but in terms of financial viability, it was better to get those prefixes done. Now, since, happy and content with those, obviously, it would follow that the next ambition would be to get the suffixes, right? Attack speed, +2 arrow, +5 to prod skills would be like the big 3. In particular, +2 arrow and the attack speed would be like the major 2 that I'd be kind of targeting. +5 I recognize is incredibly valuable for a variety of different builds, but specifically for this in particular, if it were to be targeted towards more something like lightning arrow, those would be the 2 mods that you would want to get. Excuse me for a sec. Now, you can deterministically remove suffixes and a variety of different mods on here. It is a little bit more mechanically nuanced than it was in PoE 1. It's not just like prefixes can't be changed, scour, YOLO X. It does involve omens. It involves lots of omens, and it involves very expensive omens. And again, just to restate this, don't get discouraged, but the values are going to be pretty extreme. So as I mentioned, the prefixes cost, the bow base cost 200 divines, which was about 1.1 mirrors. Thus far, we have spent, myself and bank, just under 400 divines, which is approximately 21 to 22,000 exalts, trying to put the suffixes on. And I have, as a result of those 22,000 X approximately, 400 divs, have been able to exalt on or swap the modifiers of my suffixes approximately 30 times. So that works out to be about, what would that be? 22,000 divided by 30, like 700 exalts per hit mod, which is obviously very extreme, right? But going for the things that are the pinnacle, it's meant to be difficult, or everyone would do it. So obviously that's been a bit frustrating. The best modifier that I've got so far, suffix-wise, has been tier 3 attack speed, which was 13%. Got +1 to projectile skill gems, but no sign of any of the other ones. And so that's a work in progress still. But what is important that I wanted to share with you guys here, aside from giving you the update, is to show you a couple of cool things that with respect to how omens work and how like the higher end of, or the higher level of crafting would work, as well as explaining things like the omen of whittling that have kind of a vague flavor text that I think is rather ambiguous and has confused many people, myself included, until I used it, which I've now nailed down very specifically. So we'll share that with you here. One of the things that I did after we went through, about 3.5 mirrors, or no, 3.1, 3.2 mirrors on the bow, I actually saw that somebody had posted a perfect tier 1 base with the best in slot suffix mods, all tier 1. So like in an ideal world, this is the base you would want, and those are the exact suffixes you will want. +2 to prod skills, 16 attack speed, tier 1 dex. So that's tier 1, tier 1, tier 1 on the tier 1 base, and it was 10 divines, which is cheaper than most of the omens cost individually. So naturally, I bought this, and so I don't actually have the required annulment omen that wipes suffixes here. They're about 25 divs each, and as I mentioned, we just ran through about 600. So just to demonstrate how these omens work and some of the cooler interactions, we'll do it on the prefixes of this. But naturally, if you go through the different omens, if you read the flavor text, it'll tell you what they apply to and what they don't apply to. Now, if there's anything that you could take away from this video, and I had no idea this was the case. Again, I was gone for a few days, so maybe everyone knows this and I was just behind the curve. But, assuming some of you don't, this is huge. Multiple omens can be used at once. You can use multiple omens at the same time, and their effects will both apply to the item that you are doing. So here, you can see we've got the omen of sinistral annulment, which makes it so that your next annul will remove only prefix modifiers, right? And then this one, the omen of greater annulment, that will remove 2 total modifiers the next time you use an annul. If you right click both of these, they'll become active, which you can denote by the orange square here. And then we can go ahead and grab an annulment, and voila, it has now wiped away 2 prefixes, and all 3 of those prefixes were garbaggio. So that's exactly what we wanted to happen. So that's really, really cool. And there's different ways that you can implement that rather creatively to do some neat things. So like there's the omen of dextral erasure, for example, where a chaos orb will remove only suffixes, right? And then you also have things like the omen of whittling, where your next chaos orb will remove the lowest level modifier. And this is really the bread and butter thus far of the crafting I've done. I've used about 35 omen of whittlings. I've used approximately 8 or 9 omens of dextral annulment, which are the suffix ones. And then obviously we just use the one dextral prefix one. Those ones, the annulment, where it removes a prefix or suffix, those are 25 divines apiece. These omen of whittlings are about 7 divines each. The ones that allow you to remove 2 mods are only 5x each. These are the only ones that are somewhat cheap. The dextral erasure, and then the one that also removes the prefix, those are like 25 divines each as well. So these are incredibly expensive. Divines are now, I think they've settled around 55 or 60 exalts a piece. So just to use one omen one time, you're talking about 1,500 exalts. So this is not something you should do haphazardly. If you do get one of those, for the vast majority of people, you'd be better served to sell that. I think that the net value add that you would get from the currency, in the vast majority of cases, will exceed the functional value that those have. Now, these omens might become a lot more common. They might be tied to higher map tiers, and maybe just because the average person is in the mid-range or low-range maps, things are subject to change. Naturally, this is a new game. I don't know everything with this respect, but to this point, they are quite uncommon, and they are very, very expensive. So, as I mentioned, the bow base itself was 200 divs, but so far spent more than double that, or just around double that rather, just about 400 divines on the omens. And so that's, there's some frustration tied to that, but, not going into it blind. So you sort of know what to expect. Granted, you always want to be optimistic because, it's never like you don't get excited when you get that GG hit, but nonetheless, we shall persevere, and I will give you guys updates with the bow as they come along. That is not 2, sir. like a little pair of testicles. These nuts. Oop. Thank you, sir. All right, so the quiver, however, quiver is quite a bit cheaper. Again, I was able to get 3 T1 suffixes on the tier 1 base only for 10 divines. Bows and weapons in general, obviously, are the first thing that the vast majority of builds look towards. In particular, if you're playing a build that's rather meta and that has a lot of like archetypal, it's rather malleable. Like a Fizzbow can be done, you know, lightning arrow or salvo, or you know, in PoE 1 like tornado shot, split arrow, ice shot. Right? It's not like if they nerf one of those skills, the exact same bow archetypally can be switched to different things. And that accessibility, you know, makes it rather popular, as well as being generally quite fast builds that, you know, Magic Find can be centered around, and yada, yada, yada. But that was why the focus was there. That's not to say that there aren't potentially other items that could be mirror crafted that might be more broadly ubiquitous, but that was the thinking there, at least. And both of us had sort of a baseline interest in doing so. But with respect to the suffixes, the process that we've gone through there, when I purchased it, it had 3 suffixes. And so the first thing I did was we got those 2 omens, the remove 2 mods, and then your omens will remove only suffixes. Use both of those guys. And then this is a really important thing to factor in here. The Omen of Witlings, again, as I mentioned earlier, these are the bread and the butter, right? And they're also the cheapest. They're not cheap in a broad sense. They're, you know, 7 divs, which is still like 400 exalts every time, but relative to the other omens, they're significantly cheaper. And the way that these work, per the flavor text, is while this item is active, so active being when it's right-clicked, and do remember to right-click these. If you just have them in your inventory, nothing will happen until you activate them. So once it's active, your next Chaos Orb will remove the lowest level modifier. Now, this is very ambiguous writing, the terminology used here, and if you felt the same way upon seeing this, or if you're seeing this for the first time, do not fret, because it frustrated me to no end until I tested it out a few times. Because, and even though this is somewhat useless information, I imagine some of you are probably thinking the same thing. When it says the lowest level modifier, does that mean the lowest tier? The lowest item level? The lowest relative tier? Or the lowest absolute tier? Now, what I mean by these different things is if something has 10 tiers, right, like flat fire, right, and you have tier 9. I don't know why they inverted. Tier 1 is no longer the best. The higher the tier is better here. I'm going to do my best to actually use the tiers as they're written in PoE 2. If I say tier 1 accidentally, I'm not referring to the worst one. I'm probably referring to the best one. I'll do my best to correct it. But anyways, if there are 10 tiers with something like flat fire and you have tier 9, so the second best tier, right? Tier 9 is higher than something like tier 6. Now, if you have something like attack speed, right? Attack speed only has 6 tiers. So 9 is higher than 6. However, the relative, right? That's the 90th percentile of the tiers, whereas 6 would be the equivalent of what used to be tier 1. So that's the 100th percentile. So when it says the lowest tier, does that mean relative within its own tier categorization? Or does it mean in an absolute sense? So 6 is lower than 9, so it would get rid of 6. Or if it's item level based, and tier 9 flat fire requires item level 77, and tier 6 attack speed requires item level 33, is it picking the item level requirement or this? I mean, and if it's picking the item level, they don't give you the item level requirements of any of these modifiers on the items themselves. So how does one denote that? There's a slew of questions, right, which obviously obfuscate the truth on this. And because these are quite expensive and they're rather rare, I can understand why there would be hesitation on anyone's part, myself included, to kind of dive in initially. Happy to report, though, I can definitively tell you how they work, and it is the item level. So the way that it works is if you have 4 mods like this, you can see we've got the +2 prod skills, the attack speed, the dex, and then the flat fire. What you're going to need to do anytime you're using these is to pull up PoEDB has an updated one. It doesn't have the weights, but it can tell you the item levels and then the prefixes and suffixes for the affix distribution. But in this case here, we've got quivers, right? So we can see dexterity, 31 to 33, which is the highest tier, item level 74. The +2 prod skills, item level 41. And the attack speed, item level 60. Then we've got the fire, which is, what was the value again? 3 to 8, which is smoldering, which is item level 12. So 12 is the lowest item level. So if I were to do activate Omen of Whittling and then use a Chaos Orb, this Chaos Orb, 100% of the time, would remove, well, 100% of the time, the first time I clicked it, naturally be subject to change. This would replace the fire damage to attacks, and it would, oh, fuck it, we'll just do it once. And we got Prod Speed, one of the mods we were looking for. Hooray! Mid-tier, but we can live with it. So, as you can see, that changed it. And then what you would have to do here, every time you're going to use one of those Omen of Whittlings, since we got 25 Prod Speed, we can see, wait, sorry, was it 25, 26? 25. So you can see here that that is the second lowest tier, unfortunately. But that is item level 27, which, again, dexterity is 74, prod skills is 41, and attack speed is 60. So that is still the lowest modifier tier. So if you were trying to mirror craft this or make it as perfect as possible, item level dependent, because it is rather difficult to get the max item level bases. That is one of the things that makes this bow particularly great, because it is item level 82. It's one of the only bows that is in the realm of being able to be crafted into a quote-unquote mirror item that can get the max level. Not only is it the tier 1 base, but it can get +2 arrow, and if you desired +5, etc., etc. So that's pretty cool. But with this one, it's only item level 79, so it actually cannot get tier 1 prod speed, nor can it get, I believe, tier 1 damage with bow skills. Prod speed, as you can see here, 42 to 46 requires item level 82, and the damage with bow skills is 81. It can, however, get tier 1 for all of the flat damage types and accuracy, but we don't want the accuracy. So the best that we could get here would be tier 1, tier 2, tier 2, so it would be 4 times tier 1, 2 times tier 2. Now, luckily, the two mods that have the tier 2s, it's only 3% damage on one /speed and 4% damage on the other. So it's rather small. But quivers are actually incredibly impactful because the standard application of the 85% effective quivers, as well as the fact that you can get this modifier here on all of your jewels, 5 to 15% increased bonuses gained from equipped quivers. So if you get 8 jewels that have just that singular mod, right, that's 120% quiver effect, and then 85 is 205% quiver effect, right? Which means that just like +2 on the suffix here, that becomes +6. The attack speed, which is 26%, that's 78% attack speed. So it's pretty crazy. So in case you were curious as to why I would even consider putting any currency into crafting a quiver when a bow is on the table, the quiver does actually have a large ramifications because of the scaling that happens there, thereafter. It is obviously substantially cheaper as well because of the vast amount of resources it'll take to get the suffix done. Now, as it pertains to going forward on the bow, which is I'm sure what most of you would probably be interested in, bringing in the weights from PoE 1, juxtaposing those against the possible affixes and prefix-suffix distributions with the game as they've been data mined thus far. I made some rough estimates for how many total modifiers it'll take, so whether that be through exalts or the Omen Chaos Orbs with the suffixes, to get one of the desirable suffixes that I would stop at, right? Being when I say stop, I mean like if we hit a single one of these, the other 2 suffixes would be secondary to that. Like that would be a point where I would put it up for service. It's obviously, I would say impossible because it's not technically impossible, but it like one in hundreds of millions of attempts to make something perfect in the way that you could in PoE 1 right now. And so realistically, the mirror items are going to be, 85% kind of the way there in terms of what they could be min-max. And these are the ones that would have the highest impact, right? So to get tier 1 attack speed, which is 17 to 19%, which would push this to over 730 PDPS, it's going to take approximately 60 modifier swaps or exalts or whatever. To get +1 arrow, approximately 30, and to get +2 arrow, approximately 306. And again, these are using weights from PoE 1, so it's just a rough estimate. Don't treat this as gospel or anything. Thus far, I've used approximately 30 to 40. And again, we have not hit either of these, but we have got tier 3 attack speed. At that point, the DPS was around 610. But again, want to get at least the tier 1 there. So that's what's going to be being worked on. Again, there's an extreme cost associated with this, even to do a single attempt. And there is obviously a massive breadth of... Oh my god! I don't know anybody else, but when I think about you, I touch myself. What does the goat say? Shit. Never should have doubted myself. All skill, baby. Woo! Swerve. All right, Quiver might be done soon. For those of you who might be watching for the first time, yes, I'm like this often, and yes, I'm mentally ill. Total package. Cool item, though. That was a good exalt. So I'm not going to drag the video on because I'm going to make some considerations here, but you want to pop by on Twitch, I'll be working on all this stuff. Yeah, the crafts are going along. Hopefully you learned something today. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy this kind of stuff, it'd be dope if you could throw a like, and if you want to see more, drop a sub. I'm going to do my best to keep you guys up to date with what's going on with the world of crafting, making currency, and I'll try to be as the least amount of weird as possible. All right, cool, Exiles. Hope you're having a good time. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.